not by ASAIM, but by the aquaculture industry with tuna, because of the concerns of the wild stocks of tuna declining. Now, another important issue that's coming up for the industry is climate change. I think that a lot of people have different views on what the current situation is on climate change. But when we go out in the field throughout the world and we talk to farmers and the fishermen, we hear direct stories by them of what they perceive as climate change. And they report things like changes in predictable weather patterns, and I think another speaker spoke of that today as well. We see that fishermen say that fish stocks, when they go out to go fishing, are not running in the same places or at the right times that they used to. And so they're becoming very concerned about the future. So these things will have an important impact on how we're going to be approaching the aquaculture industry in the future. There's another issue in the aquaculture industry that's becoming very important, which is the global certification schemes that are being promoted by different organizations. This is sort of like a top-down regulation coming from either consumers or consumer advocate groups. They're coming back and affecting us in aquaculture. Now there's Global GAP, which is the EU certification system. America has, through the Global Aquaculture Alliance, the BAP or ACC certification scheme. The WWF has a certification scheme. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to address food safety and sustainability issues. Now, I put in here volunteer with a question mark because what's happening is that as certain markets are saying, look, you have to have these certification schemes, they're no longer voluntary. They're going to have to be almost mandatory in the industry. Now, the question is, will small farmers be able to adapt to this? Because some of these certification schemes require payments or require expensive consultants to come in. Some of them have slightly conflicting goals. And so harmonization of these certification schemes is going to be important. And that's something that has not happened yet. So you could, right now in the industry, you have situations where a single producer might have to get 3 different certifications if they want to enter 3 different markets. Sustainable technologies are going to be very important. We're going to be looking at, as I said, looking to very regulated production intensity and looking into recirculating systems. As I said, zero water exchange and multiple water use systems. Some of the things that we're going to be looking at, as I said before as well, was looking to move from low quality feed inputs to looking at high quality feeds. And this is something that ASAM has been working on very hard with the feed mills in Southeast Asia and the world to help develop these feeds and to promote the correct use of them in the industry. We need to, of course, keep those FCRs low and reduce nutrient loading so that when water is discharged from these farms, or you have a cage situation in a common reservoir or a common bay, that it doesn't pollute the environment. Disease and drugs is also going to be a very important issue in aquaculture, and it is an important issue right now. Disease organisms and pathogens are usually always present in natural environments. And oftentimes, when the fish is not stressed, it doesn't cause an outbreak of a disease. They may have it at a low level, and there's nothing happening. But as soon as they're stressed by poor feeds or poor handling or maybe bad weather, then that disease can be expressed. And so what we need to do is look towards more health management of aquaculture. We want to see that the thought process by the farmer and by the hatchery and by the industry is how to find better management practices to address issues of disease before they become a problem, to manage health so that we don't have disease outbreaks, and when we do have disease outbreaks, how to treat it effectively and quickly. And so that brings us to the question of chemicals and drugs. Now, non-approved chemicals and drugs and chemicals are a big issue in the industry right now. They're a danger both to the farmers that are using them, and they're a danger to the final consumer who might be consuming them. And this has been an issue in worldwide trade of seafood. You may have heard of situations in the EU where they rejected shipments of shrimp because they found chloramphenicol or nitrofuran residues in the shrimp. And something the EU did that really shocked, I think, the industry, and this is speaking from the seafood industry standpoint, was that when the EU identified a shipment that contained one of these banned drugs, they didn't ship it back to the supplier. They destroyed it because they felt that if it wasn't safe for the EU, then it's not safe for anybody else. So you can imagine the shock by suppliers when $250,000 worth of shrimp was burned on the docks. We've had situations in China where 5 species were put on a prohibited list going to America, and these issues keep on coming up, but they're being recognized by the industry that we have to pay more attention to unregulated and non-approved chemicals and drugs. But we have to recognize as well that there should be the ability to use drugs that are approved. So we're going to be looking for appropriate, effective, and safe drugs and chemicals that can be used. Their use can be carefully planned, monitored, and recorded, so that when it does get to the final consumer, that these shipments are not rejected for antibiotic residues. So health management. Here I say 0 tolerance limits on contaminants. For some countries, they have a 0 tolerance limit, and so if they find any of a residue in that product, they reject it. There's a very limited current number of approved drugs and chemicals that are allowed for aquaculture. I know that the animal industry has a lot that they can use with the veterinary supervision. That's something that's still happening now in aquaculture, where we're working towards identifying those drugs that are effective, and then what withdrawal times and application rates are. And also, there's something that we'll be looking at more in the future as well, which is vaccines. I already mentioned specific pathogen-free and specific pathogen-resistant stocks, but also vaccination of stocks is something that's been used in the salmon industry for a long time and could be used more widely in other aquaculture enterprises as well. Okay, so for aquafeed ingredients, when it comes to aquafeeds, of course, the most important aspect from our standpoint is what protein goes into an aquafeed. So there's several protein sources you can use for aquafeeds. The primary ones, obviously, are fish meal. This has been used for a very long time because the perception by the industry that fish meal, it's something that fish are already eating, so it has all the necessary nutrients inside that fish meal for the fish. Rendered animal products, such as poultry byproduct meal, meat and bone meal, and then, of course, our favorite, which is vegetable proteins and concentrates, such as soybean meal, DDGS, and corn. So the first thing that we often find when we go out into the industry to discuss the use of proteins is that there's a very big preference for fish meal. And fish meal has historically been the primary protein source for aquaculture because it makes it very easy to formulate a diet for fish, because there's a lot of the nutrient requirements you need. You can see here that aquaculture was the second largest user of fish meal. And aquaculture, as the feed amount increases, we know we only produce 25 million metric tons of feed. You can see how much of that feed is taking up the fish meal. So aquaculture has continued to compete with other animal industries for this fish meal. So as that becomes a more limiting ingredient worldwide, so there's pretty much a static amount of fish meal in the world that can be used. It means that fish meal is going to go up in price. So what's happening now is that the aquaculture industry is looking into how to reduce the amount of fish meal in their diets. And fish meal, what we see in the future happening is that fish meal is going to be really targeted for the most highest quality and desirable species and for specialty feeds, such as for nurseries or hatcheries, because those feeds are the most important time periods for the fish. Now, vegetable proteins and concentrates, of course, are increasing very rapidly in terms of use in aquaculture. We see that it's going to be up to 75% of the protein requirements by 2015, and we see that as the industry learns that they can really use combinations of vegetable proteins to address nutritional issues, the resistance to going away from fish meal to vegetable proteins is decreasing as well. So we're seeing a much more openness to using vegetable proteins in diets, and by the work that ASAM has been doing, I hope to think that we're actually promoting the use of vegetable proteins worldwide as well.